very long introduction. So, Pet, I was just telling people about the topic for this evening and sharing a little bit about your own background as well that you've shared with us for your speaker bio. So we've heard a little bit about your role, but keen for you now just to share your own experiences and your reflections being involved in volunteering. So thank you, and over to you.
Thank you, Emily. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you here. Okay. Thanks to technology that, during the pandemic, we still stay in touch, that enable us to be able to keep in touch with everyone here, Australia and Laos. So here in Laos is 2:35 p.m. There is only your evening. Okay, let me just share a little bit about myself with you. I was born in a rural area of Laos, from a very poor family, from a very poor community, I would say. I don't have a high education. After high school, I was awarded a scholarship to study pharmacy in Vientiane, the capital of Laos. But I decided not to take it because I did not want to add extra burden to my family, to my parents' finance. Because being awarded a scholarship doesn't mean that, the government, it doesn't mean that there will be enough money for a living, but it just means that we didn't have to pay for tuition for what was going to study. And then everything here, was to pay in cash by the time, no credit cards, no loans. So that's kind of thing. So I didn't want to leave the family to go to a big city because I was not familiar with, I just grew up in a small town, I would say. And my father, my sister, most of my family members speak fluent French. I spent so many years learning to speak French, but I just could not make it. It's unbelievable. And then I spent 3 months learning English and then prepare myself to take examination to study English language, and then I got it, I made it, and I passed. And so that's my background, basically just learning English to teach English and as a second language. And by the time back in 1990s, so teacher training college only offer 3 years of education. And so that makes me eligible to apply for any scholarships at all when I wanted to continue and upgrade myself. That's just because of criteria for most of scholarships. Only they make it available for 11 years plus 4 years. So 4 years means university, which before it was only in Vientiane, capital of Laos, by the time back in 1995, and then because of that, so my education is only 11 plus 3. So which means when I submitted my application for a scholarship, then I was rejected all the time because of 11 plus 3 instead of 11 plus 4. So I gave up on scholarship hunting. Really, I could not make it because there is no way I can make it, and because of that, so and again, so later back in early 2000s, authorities made it, Ministry of Education make it into for those who graduated, who studied only 3 years like me, to be able to upgrade themselves, and they had to study 2 more years to make it, to make themselves more eligible to apply for a scholarship overseas. But I could not upgrade myself. I could not afford to just go and study for another 2 years because I am a single mother where I had to work to make income to feed my children, and going and studying, then nobody is going to pay for my education and nobody is going to feed my family. So that's where I am at today, get stuck, And then again, my career, I started when I was still a student at a teacher training college. My first summer, I paid to learn how to use a computer. And then my the second year, my summer second year of my college, I started to work, with INGO, so that I could practice my English and so that I could get to know foreigners, so that I could earn extra income to support my own education, that sort of thing. And starting from being an interpreter, translator, office assistant, project officer, program officer, doing all sorts of things. And so my work experience, my past experience, I worked in a wide range of sectors, including health, emergency relief, agriculture, trade, unexploded ordnance or landmines, education, inclusive education, disability, that sort of thing. So my years in working with international organizations, that helps me so much with my current work, where, here, it depends very much on level of personal relationship that we have with people we are coordinating our work with. So it's kind of like, for me, it's not new to the two different sectors, because I worked in the sector before. I met some people there. So it's kind of reconnecting back to the old friendship and relationship that I had before. And then it helps so much with my current work, I would say. And back in the time, the reason why being able to speak English helped me so much. Back in 1990s, there were only few people who were able to speak English. So because of that, being able to speak English was like gold mine, where it gave me opportunities to get a job in different sectors, basically. So I didn't have technical knowledge in agriculture, but I was one working in agriculture sector just because of being able to speak English, really, Of course, now, there are more people speaking English, so that's better for our country, I would say. And me, formal education, that's it, I would say, But I took opportunity whenever it was offered to me to go attend a training workshop on project cycle management, on finance management, on budgeting, on proposal writing, on whatsoever workshop or training available and offered by the project that I was working in, So to me, I would say that, I really support, education, but when there is no opportunity to continue in formal education like me, so non-formal education, it's part of the journey that can enable us to learn new knowledge along the way when we keep working, I would say. Yeah. Again, being in the culture and tradition, I would say the challenge that I have is even within the family, most of our Asian family, I would say that's a boy, it's given more privilege and priority for education, that sort of thing. So being a woman in a society, and also in a leadership role, at some point pose great threats to man, I would say. And there was time where I also encountered sexual harassment as well. So I was enjoying the work, but because of that happened, so to protect my own dignity, I just quit my job. So that was not really, where I had to find a new job, I would say. Yeah. AVI, Australian Volunteer International, was not in Laos before, so I didn't know them before. But I recall that like a decade ago, I'm not one of a person who is very good in technology. I did not do much chat on Skype. I I basically it was just email, not really chat function or platform at all, you know. So and again, coming back to that, how I got a job with Austrian Volunteers Program here is they found me on LinkedIn, which I had created an account, a profile like 10 years ago, and I did not update it. I did not have my profile updated. I did not have my bio on LinkedIn at all. Very interesting, very funny me, you know. And AVI found me and they contacted me. So when I first checked, I was just like, who was talking to me? I don't think anyone wanted to talk to me. And it took me like a week to go and check in the message. And then, oh, job opening. No, that's internet scam. You know? So I was not convinced there was possibility of that, you know. And it took me another week, like, okay, let me check. And then I screenshot my LinkedIn and then sent to one of a volunteer I worked with on another project. She was so excited and said, Pat, this is a great opportunity, you know, they found you, apply. Just like, oh, is it true? Really? Really? This is really true on the internet? I thought people just, you know, fake and cheat and trying to get the money out of the other people, you know. So internet scam, that sort of thing, very interesting. So that's how I come to get about, you know, that to get to do my job today. Very interesting. And so that's thanks to LinkedIn, I would say. So I started my job with AVI as a country program manager for Austrian volunteer program back in January 2018, almost 4 years now. Lucky, I'm so lucky, I would say that, you know, to be at AVI, where there is an increasing interest in staff developments. So that gives me opportunity to develop, to improve myself while I'm working, I would say. My current role, as I share, I'm a country program manager for Austrian Volunteers Program in Laos, which means the team, I am leading the team to deliver on aspects of the program with both in-country and remote volunteers, e-volunteering, here we call remote volunteers. So again, as I share my work experience, my past connections help me so much to reconnect with all the sectors that we work with here, you know. Again, yeah. And talking about the country, the program WiAD, here, I would say that, you know, Laos is a laid back country. So we are slower than Australia in doing things, in getting things done. And we have meeting canceled the last minute. I was on my way to attend a meeting, and then I got to the location and then nobody showed up. Just like, what happened? Calm down, check, just like, oh, no meeting today. Just like, okay, that's how it goes, you know. So that's, we still have this kind of thing going on here, and getting things done as well. It takes more time, that sort of thing. So here, our partner organizations are government sector. That's where we are allowed to work with. So we can only place our Austrian volunteers with government agencies and offices, I would say. Our country priorities are aligned with national strategy and DFAT priorities such as education, agriculture, health, and trade. And again, our program emphasizes a lot on locally led capacity development. So our country team meets with partner organizations to discuss and support them to develop an assignment. So basically, it comes from our partner to tell us that what they want a volunteer to help them with, to support them with. So we include our partner organization in an interview at the very early stage, from developing assignment and then interview. And then they are the ones to decide who is more suitable. You know, like for example, we got 2 very strong candidates, and then we interviewed them both. So they selected the candidates with a family, with children. So to our surprise, we asked them, you know, but then it turned out to be really one of the best assignment. the most successful assignment. Even the candidate has family and children. Yeah. And so so currently we don't have any in-country volunteer at all because of the pandemic, and we had to repatriate it all volunteers back to Australia in March last year. And so, but currently we have 6 remote volunteers that's supporting education and health here in Laos. And we have been under lockdown since mid-April this year. So this is the longest lockdown we have ever been under. And there were times where everything got more strict. We could not leave the house. And then, village authority patron the village and making sure that we stay at home where there were too many cases of infection. And so because of the lockdown, because of this continuous lockdown, and we are not prepared for the work from home. I mean, it's okay for us, the in-country team, because we have a laptop and we can just work from home. But for our partner organization, they were not prepared for this to happen. And so slowly, with our support, then they are able to host remote volunteers, because we are talking about equipments, infrastructure, technology, internet, several things coming to that, So that's why we have very few remote volunteers at the moment. Last year we got 5. I think this fiscal year, half of the way we have already 6. So we are doing better over times, I would say. Would say, yeah. So we have the country here. We have achieved 42% of vaccination. That where we are aiming at 50% before the country can open up again, and the borders remain closed, land borders, and so only foreigners can fly in with so many support documents. So basically, there is no tourist visa available upon arrival like used to be. So before any foreigners can come in, can arrive in Laos, then there need to be a reason to justify why are you coming in, and then with 14 days quarantine as required as part of their arrival. And because of that, also this changes our visa procedure as well, and makes it even more challenging for us. But during the pandemic, during this horrible time, we are developing kind of, we are talking about localization of volunteering approach as well. So we are prototyping national youth volunteer with local youth volunteer sending organization here. And we are doing consultation workshops with them to see, what's possible, and to shape our ways to move forward, to go forward as well. And then our program here in Laos is also very much emphasized on including everyone, including people with disabilities as well. So I am part of a panel for diversity inclusion for our program as well. So we want to include everyone. I think that's more or less about me, about Laos, about our program. Ask any question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We'll give you a little. It's so wonderful to hear your story and to be able to connect with you from so far away. So that's one benefit of this horrible pandemic. But thank you. I will open it up for some questions, and if anyone has one for Sarah has a question. So
Hi, Pat. My name is Sarah, and I work on a program that supports DFAT's International Health Program. So I have to say, first of all, I'm very happy to hear that having a really old and updated LinkedIn is no barrier to employment, because my program's coming to an end. I might need to dust mine off a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Second of all, yeah, it was really great to hear about your experience and about your work with Australian Volunteers International. And I just wanted to ask you a bit more about how, in a practical sense, e-volunteering can work. Because my experience of volunteering is really in the community, and often the relationships and friendships you make in the community. So how do you manage working with people that maybe you haven't met before and don't know your community, or do you only choose people who have experience in Laos already?
Yeah, so thank you, Sarah, for your question. To share with you here, when we have recruited Australian volunteers, and then we already prepare them even before their departure of Australia. So connecting them with their partner organization as soon as they become our preferred candidates, and then so that way we facilitate the process, by leading, emailing them, organizing Skype or Zoom. We use Skype before, and now Zoom, and then and also we have kind of cultural session with them. It's part of their online learning where they are required to complete it, But then when they arrive in country, the first 3 weeks, we work with them to support them to make sure that they get settled in country and well prepared to work, And so we have a quite thorough in-country orientation program for them. So talking about culture, talking about what they can do, what they can't do and don't, and also what to avoid, so that way, and also sharing about how Lao people are working, and also we also connect them with we say our return volunteer as well, who also can share experience about culture, about the country, about community in Laos as the same perspective as a volunteer, always not coming from me, And so even for those that, for return volunteer means that Australian volunteers who work in country and complete their assignment. And so sometimes they are in country, sometimes they are back in Australia. So we keep them connect, we introduce them to one another, to each other, so that way they can ask questions. And our return volunteer also can even advise, check in, and support our new Australian volunteers as well. Even to prepare what to bring, what to buy. You don't need to buy this, you can find this in Laos, for example. So that's kind of support that we are doing this kind of like 24/7 and very thorough support and orientation to them. So we invite other organizations outside to also share their point of view as well, not always coming from me. So sometimes it comes from Australian return volunteer, sometimes it comes from their partner organization. And when they are in country, we also arrange for volunteers and partner organization what we can check in, catch up, that sort of thing. So where they can also meet with other partner organizations, where other volunteers also meet with their partner organization. So it's kind of keeping things encouraged, stimulated, I would say. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great. And I hope that we can, first of all, I hope that your lockdown is lifted for you very soon, but I also hope that we can
I hope so.
come and meet you in Laos sometime in the not too distant future.
Sure, join us. To come. And here, in most of the countries that we work in on our program, we have very good, very supportive. We have so much support from the Australian embassy or DPAC posts, I would say. So that's why it makes our work really going smooth, So if there is anything, we can always chat and talk to them, and we discuss. So they are very supportive, I would say. Yep.
Great to hear.
Come to Laos.
I have been before. I would very much like to go again.
Yeah, sure. So you can get engaged with us, keep yourself updated by subscribing to our mailing list or doing talent pool. Now we have, because of the pandemic, we have a talent pool where candidates can register themselves and their expertise. So we can run the talent pool when there is an assignment to match, and then we can get in touch. That's also another way before we get to be able to advertise an assignment.
Right, it's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Did anyone have any other questions for Pam?
Yeah. It's probably along the same lines as Sarah's, but I just wanted to thank you as well for your your background. I thought it was really inspirational and really enjoyed it. But I just wanted to ask, I guess if you found that the remote volunteers have been able to provide the same amount of value that the in-country volunteers have been able to provide, given that they don't have that kind of cultural in-country experience, and what kind of work they've been doing.
I cannot hear very well. Emily, could you help me to repeat the question, please?
Yeah, sure. So the question is, has there been a difference between the remote volunteering and what they're able to do compared to maybe in-country volunteers who might get a better understanding of the cultural differences and how to work within a Lao institution? So could you just maybe share your thoughts about the remote volunteering and how successful that's been, or what maybe some of the challenges are?
Yeah, thank you for your question. This is not the best option, I would say, to be honest, because it requires stable internet connection. That's key, right? But it's better than nothing, I would say. It works for some sectors. For education, for example, when talking about capacity development, for example, research skills for lecturers, for example, I think that works pretty well. But then probably not for some assignment like veterinarian work, right? Because you can't do surgery online, for example, right? So so we have to be selective, and that's why we don't have many remote volunteers with us, just because of not every assignment is it would be good for remote assignment, I would say. And because of that, of course, and also it's very limited. Even for English speaking, talking about English proficiency trainer, right? So when students, so I got some volunteers share that. So when because we have to keep we keep masks at all time when we are at the office together. And so it makes it more challenging for our volunteers to see how their student pronounce, right? And the voice doesn't come from the mask properly, like, this way. And so that's even talking about, teaching, learning English is already a challenge. So that's, yeah. Yeah, and also for our volunteer, we try to keep them, we try to do as much as possible on country orientation, even they are on remote assignment, but we still share with them about culture, about do and don'ts, about, we even organize cooking class online. So the volunteer said, oh, too bad, I can't taste the food. So we say, well, when you come, you will do real cooking and then you can taste it. Yeah. So that's, of course, so many limitations, you know. Yeah. But we do what we can, I would say. And now our Austrian volunteers programs comes up with providing some financial support to our partners on, we say, tech support. So like, you know, buying internet package, stronger, better package, so that way they can stay connected with our volunteers, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's what we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make the most of a difficult situation. So I have one final question, unless anyone else does. So I guess, Pet, you're in quite a unique position because you get to see a lot of different volunteers come through, and you also work with the partner organizations. So you sort of see both sides. And so I wonder if you know, if anyone here or we're thinking about volunteering in the future, do you have any advice or tips on what makes a good volunteer placement, or what people should think about before they maybe decide to do that?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Excuse me. I got my very bad allergy, hay fever, and none of the medicine I can buy here that help me. Well, it helped with some symptoms, but not with the coughing. So I have all the Telfast from Australia to help me to save me. So talking about that, I think, you know, here, especially Laos, you know, our country is so unique. Of course, there are things that we don't know, but then, you know, as a volunteer, any volunteers who are successful on their assignment for Laos, I observe is this way. They come to the country with experience and knowledge packed, you know, but they come with an attitude of being open-minded, being ready to accept change, and being ready to adapt themselves to the culture, and being ready to learn about what the culture is all about. How can I get things done the way I want, but probably not in an Austrian way, for example. I think coming to the country with an attitude of being open-minded and accepting that, you know, I am not the expert. I don't know everything. I am here to learn. I am here to share. I am here to support. So this attitude really makes any assignment successful. And it doesn't come from me, it comes from our return volunteers who have been very successful as well. So this is one of the tips I would say, because to gain other people's trust and knowledge, you know, attitude really matters here, I would say. And we are kind of people, we don't want to have conflicts. Most of the time when we don't like it, often that we don't tell. So it makes it very challenging for our volunteer. Like when someone avoids us, then we have to ask a question like, did I offend them? Did I do something wrong? So what happened, you know? Yeah, and then we need to fix that. So I think I also observed that there were some assignments, there were some volunteers who came in with kind of attitude like, I know everything. This is the way we do things. But also before coming to that point, there are things that sometimes we try it, but it did not work, you know, and that's why we do things the way we do sometimes. So I think it's good to come with an open-minded, with packed with knowledge and experience, but then coming and kind of being a mentor rather than an expert and saying like, you know, I know everything. So that kind of attitude, I would think it's very crucial for a successful assignment.
Great. Thank you so much, Pet, for sharing that. And yeah, thank you again for your time and for preparing those comments and thoughts for us and for sharing your story. So we will move on to our next speaker, but you're very welcome to stay and join, and I promise I won't mute us again. So you're welcome to listen in to the next speaker as well in our conversation. But we understand if it's difficult. So, but thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. I will stay to also hear from the experience of our volunteer. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so quick food break, drinks break if you'd like as well. But Fiona's just going to share with us a little bit of her experience as well. Everyone a moment.
Oh, I'm going to have some
Sorry, Pet, we're just having a quick food break. So
Enjoy. I am here.
I wish we were eating Lao food though.
Oh, yes, of course, come.
Yeah. Some of my my cousin's partner is from Laos, so
Oh,
he
yes.
he cooks very good Lao food for us.
Oh,
So
which part?
he comes from Vientiane.
Oh, okay, wow.
Just north of a village just north of Vientiane. Yeah.
Wow.
So I would like to go back and visit again soon. But yeah.
Well, let me know when you come to Laos. We can catch up.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love to
Yeah.
see what AVI is doing in Laos. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I'll just put us on mute until we start again.
Sure, sure. Don't worry.
All right. So
just getting some more wine. So
Oh,
if
okay.
anybody still needs some, just wave your hand and get it back in.
great. All right. Well, we're going to hear from Fiona now. Yes, she's off. I'm off. Yep.
Checking,
Won't
sorry.
worry. It's okay. That's fair call.
Backstopping.
Fair call. So Fiona is an international development and human rights and communications professional and has experience in the public, private and not-for-profit sectors. So before the pandemic, she was on assignment through the Australian Volunteers Program as a grants and communications coordinator at Tanzanian not-for-profit Girls Livelihood and Mentorship Initiative. And she's continuing to volunteer with the organisation remotely, along with Tanzanian-based organisation Male Advocacy for Gender Equality and the US-based International Institute for Human Security. She also has various bachelor's studied, you're a studier, Bachelor of International Studies, a Master of Human Rights Law and Policy, and you're currently doing the annoyingly named MAPA degree at ANU, which a few of us here have probably done. You've had experience as well overseas. I'll let you can talk through that in a minute, but very passionate about gender equality, human rights, and also something you were touching on earlier around anti-racism and decolonisation within the development spaces. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing, and Fiona and I are going to do a bit more of a Q&A tag team session. So yeah, we'd love just to hear a little bit more about your overall volunteer experience, where you've gone, what you've done. Yeah, tell us a bit about it.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. the existence of this group until a few weeks ago when I was speaking to the returned Australian Volunteers Network, my officer, and she suggested that I might be interested in speaking to you guys. So it's really nice to be here and to know that this exists. So I was, as pointed out, I was in Tanzania with Girls Island Initiative, which was previously called Africa Tanzania. It was sort of stereotypically founded.
Sorry. Just slightly a bit closer, Pet. I'm so sorry.
Hey, buddy.
Maybe so you can hear.
You can't hear me, but you can't see me, but you can hear me.
Smile, ladies.
Yeah,
I can hear better.
So yeah, I was grants and communications coordinator. Oh yes, sorry, that was what I was saying. So it started out as, it was called Africade. It was your fairly typical white savior style founding, unfortunately, but it has moved well beyond that set up, and it's a really great organization now. Mentors girls to stay in school and develop their leadership capabilities. And they have two programs, KISA and Internship Harbour. KISA is for upper secondary school girls and concentrates on kind of preparing them for university. I think there's something, the statistic is something like 3 to 5% of girls actually go on to year 11 and 12 equivalent, or upper secondary schooling. So, you know, it's only a fairly rare thing, unfortunately, for girls to get to that point. So the idea was to try and mentor them to take up leadership positions in their communities. And they have a variety of different activities that they do for that. And then the Internship Harbour is targeted at younger girls who are more likely to drop out, more likely to experience vulnerability. It is compulsory theoretically to go to school in the same way as we do here up to year 10, but most girls don't make it that far, unfortunately. Lots of early pregnancy, early marriage, a tendency to favour boys over girls in different family settings, that sort of thing. So yeah, the programs I think were very worthwhile. The people I worked with were outstanding, and I was really lucky to be in such a friendly. I was actually probably the best working environment I've ever been in to this day, and I think that's why they couldn't get rid of me. I kind of stayed on and kept volunteering when the pandemic hit. I still had about 2 months left of my assignment when the pandemic hit, but we sort of had to pack up within a week and get out the door, and it was a whole saga. And then when I got back, the Australian Volunteers Program was really generous, actually. They gave us, anybody who was still involved in the program was given support for the 3 months following, actually more than what we would have been receiving in country in most cases, because we're back in Australia. And but you didn't have to continue your assignment remotely, because a lot, as my colleague pointed out, there wasn't necessarily the facilities to continue remote volunteering on that side of things. But fortunately for me, they did have that set up because they are still connected to a US-based organization that founded them. Things are very different there now because Tanzania has gone through a bit of a change in the laws around not-for-profit organizations, so that there's been a bit of a reckoning with the not-for-profit sector there, and they've sort of changed the rules. So GLAMI, as it's called for short, which was originally Africa Tanzania had to get a new board, change their name, re-register, all those sorts of things. It was very chaotic and very difficult process, but it's actually turned out really well for them because they're now kind of running their own agenda, very much kind of still receive the majority of their funding from the US body, but have the autonomy that I think they sort of lacked before, to kind of decide what direction they want to go in, basically. And so once I was back, I opted to not go through. So once I was back for, I think it was the 3 months, I just kept kind of working remotely anyway because I didn't have anything else to do. And I missed the cutoff. I was actually already studying the MAPA degree, but I kind of put it on hold because it was a bit too much to be doing at the same time. But I missed the enrollment date for the new semester, so I just kept working remotely. And then they brought in the remote assignments, which were specifically, identified assignments that you apply for. And unfortunately, I mean, it's a difficult line to walk, and I can understand when it comes to organizations like AVI. Like when you're volunteering, they cover everything. So they cover your flights, your medical insurance, your living allowance, your in-country living allowance, and also a rent, that sort of thing. So pretty much everything is covered, unless you have like a mortgage or some significant responsibilities back home. You can pretty much live off what they give you. But when you come back here, it's still a volunteer position. They can't really be paying people a living wage in Australian dollars. So the remote volunteer opportunities were only kind of giving a very small kind of stipend in the order of $30 a week to cover your internet costs. And unfortunately, even though during the pandemic it wasn't such an issue because nobody was working, if they didn't already have a job, sort of thing, it was quite difficult to find any work. After that, and when things sort of started to get back to normal, yeah, it wasn't really viable. So I just kind of kept working with them anyway, but not in an official capacity. So it wasn't sort of like I wasn't letting them down. I was just kind of helping where I could. And then after, I think probably about a year, AVI came out with or AVP came out with this grant opportunity called Go Back, Give Back grant, which usually involves the return volunteer going back and doing some sort of discrete project. In this case, obviously, it was all remote, but we applied for it and got to do a program which we've just wrapped up now, which was more concentrated around health and hygiene. So a lot of what they were looking for this particular round as well was, to do with COVID as well, and showing benefits to prevent the spread of COVID. And we renovated some toilets at one of the partner schools. Glami's model is that it does its mentoring programs through schools. So they have to have a really good relationship with the local government and regional government and all of the different tiers of the bureaucracy. And unfortunately, the Tanzanian government doesn't really see the social kind of projects as being as advantageous as infrastructure style projects. So that's something that's been kind of a problem for a while. And the grant actually allowed them to contribute to the infrastructure of this particular school and run programs at the same time, and has given them kind of license to continue with that work, which has been really beneficial. So that's kind of that sort of area of my volunteering experience, and I realized we were going to have a back and forth, and I've just talked. But yeah, that was, I guess, and I think sort of getting back to the premise that you mentioned in terms of volunteering as a kind of a stepping stone into career change, etc. My background, even though I've sort of studied primarily in areas that would lead to a development style career, I've had a lot of trouble getting into it without any kind of experience. And the experience that I have had has been more towards the communications, social media, all of that sort of style of things, writing, story writing, content creation, that side of things. So that was kind of my in, as far as I was concerned, and also getting some experience with grant writing. I've been on the other side of it because I used to work at the Fulbright Commission for a couple of years. So I was quite used to looking at people's applications, and then being on the other side of it in Tanzania was really interesting because, yeah, you sort of got to, but I think when it comes to what you were talking about before about, is it better to be a remote volunteer or to have, I think nothing beats the in-person experience, definitely. But I also think we could be doing a lot more stuff remotely, realistically. And I've just changed track because we were talking about something else and I've gone off on a tangent. But yeah, I suppose with this style of volunteer work, I think it is more sustainable, more responsible than some of the other voluntourism approaches which you kind of get out there. I've not done anything like that, but my first volunteering experience was actually through ASEC, which is a really long French acronym that I can't remember, but it's an on-campus organisation on different universities all over the place. And they do internships. When I was finishing my master's at UNSW, they suggested that perhaps I'd like to do one of their internships. And I thought, okay, that sounds really interesting. I can do one on HIV awareness and education in schools. I'm working with an NGO for women living with HIV. And I was like, great, that sounds amazing. I'd be really interested to go to Ghana. They're like, cool, they don't have that program in Ghana, but they do have it in Cote d'Ivoire, which is just next door. And I was like, Cote d'Ivoire, wouldn't I have to be able to speak French? And they're like, no, it should be fine. I did need to be able to speak French. So it was a bit of a baptism of fire. And I feel like I got a lot more out of that than the people that I was supposedly trying to help or, to be part of service giving. And it was only a 2-month stint. And I actually am still in touch with the NGO that I worked with, interestingly, because they were amazing as well. I never really leave anywhere, to be honest. But yeah, that's kind of an example of volunteering, which I think it's not so much about the organisation and what they need and the people on the ground and what they're looking for, and it's more about what the volunteer wants. And obviously there has to be some engagement with that, because you have to be able to incentivize people to go and help out in areas that help is needed. But at the same time, it can't all be about what we want. And I think one of the biggest things I learned from the whole experience was certainly that, as was pointed out, I think people on the ground are the experts. They know the work that they need. They know what needs to be done. And certainly in my role as a grant coordinator, communications person, it was very much about accessing the funding and the decision makers, which all happen to be the quote unquote local north, setting the agenda. So it was more about access to the funding that was needed and being a kind of a conduit rather than actually sharing any kind of expertise. And I think it's a really good point to go into that with a really open mind and a really like a degree of humility, because the way that it's framed is that it's a capacity building exercise and that we're the experts going there to do X, Y, Z. And in a lot of cases, certainly like veterinarians, obviously that's a bit of a different story, but with the kind of assignment that I was doing, it was very much the fact that I'm in the industry, that was my skill. So it was really important to remember that and to I mean, there was some incidental things as well that I was able to kind of help out with. I think growing up in a culture where, and growing up at a time where I've always had access to computers means that things are a little bit more intuitive. So I was able to do some, you know, helping out with basic word processing type stuff that isn't necessarily the sort of thing that people learn in school there, because you might not have the facilities, etc. But like for the most part, I got so much out of the experience, and it definitely confirmed for me that I wanted to be in development. So that's why I delved more deeply into the Master of Applied Anthropology, Participatory Development. And I think it is a useful thing to have on your CV as well, because every job that I'm looking at applying for that's in the aid and development sector now almost universally says, you know, needs to have experience in an overseas setting in a development context.